I'm Devin Dwyer in Washington. Great to have you with us on this Tuesday. Quinn Owen, our immigration reporter, is here as well. A lot to talk about on the immigration front this morning. While we also have our eyes overseas in Asia, in Vietnam. President Trump arriving just a few hours ago this morning there, ready for his second summit with Kim Jong-un of North Korea, who also arrived today by train. And I understand from our team on the ground there that the motorcade pulled up to his hotel with a whiff of marijuana, Quinn. There was a certain stench coming from the motorcade vehicles, according to our team on the ground. Perhaps there was some smoking going on in that group, but we'll get a live update in a little bit from our team on the ground in Vietnam. But first, we start with the big debate that is shaping up right now in the House of Representatives over a measure by House Democrats to terminate the president's emergency declaration. And Quinn, you've been following this a little bit. So much money is on the line here for the president's border wall. House Democrats basically say the president has done an unconstitutional power grab. Yeah, that's right, Devin. And landowners in Texas are actually speaking out about this, too. In one of the lawsuits filed against the national emergency, they're saying it is basically the funding method is unconstitutional because it steps on Congress's powers. So being sued in a couple of fronts, both by the states and some landowners. Senate Republicans also likely to take up this resolution that House Democrats are putting forward today. And just a few minutes ago, Republican leader Mitch McConnell suggested that perhaps it could also pass the Republican Senate. Take a listen.
We had a very fulsome discussion of this issue in the conference at noon today with the Vice President and with a lawyer from the Justice Department. It dominated the entire discussions about the legality, the appropriateness, and all the rest. I think I can safely say my members were extremely interested in the subject, and I personally couldn't handicap the outcome at this point, but we will certainly be voting on it. Now, if you know Mitch McConnell, you know that's about as close as he gets to acknowledging something is perhaps going to pass, is not going to go the president's way, that being a termination vote for his national emergency declaration. A lot of Republicans, Quinn, as you know, concerned about constitutional issues with that, the precedent it would set, including some of those over in the House of Representatives. We're joined now by one of those Republicans, Justin Amash, a Republican of Michigan, who joins us now. Congressman, great to see you. You've been one of the co-sponsors of this effort that's going to be on the floor later today to terminate the emergency declaration. Why aren't more conservative, constitutional conservatives joining you in this? Are you surprised you're sort of a single man out in the wilderness on this one?
I'm not totally surprised. Behind the scenes, privately, many of them are very concerned about what the president is doing, and they understand our constitutional system, and they would, I think, love the opportunity to oppose him. They have that opportunity here, and I think they're not going to take it for political purposes. They're worried about what might happen to them back home with Republican voters, and that's a shame because our policies here shouldn't be based on partisan ways of thinking.
And I want to drill down on that if I could. You're one of hundreds of Republicans in the House of Representatives, so that's a lot of Republicans that have some political concerns about blocking the president on this. What makes your district so different? Why are you able, with your constituents, to sort of stake out this ground, and why aren't more of your fellow Republicans able to follow you and say, look, you know, I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative, but I stand for the Constitution? Why does that argument not carry as much weight?
I've been a very independent representative for many, many years. My constituents know me well. They understand where I'm coming from. They understand that I'll vote on principle. And I think that gives me more room to do the right thing. In a lot of other districts, the members of Congress are very partisan on both the left and the right. And then when you have a Republican or Democratic president in office, they don't want to challenge a president from their own party because it becomes very dicey politically for them. If you've been telling your district how you're going to operate all these years and they know you're independent, I think it gives you a lot more room to do the right thing.
And what do you say, Congressman Amash, to these arguments from the administration that there is a crisis at the border? In fact, during the negotiations, the conference negotiations to avert a shutdown a couple weeks ago,
A number of Border Protection officials, DHS officials, came to Capitol Hill. They briefed Republicans and Democrats, and they said, look, we're on the front lines. We need more steel slats. We need to build a wall. It would help us. Do you think that was disingenuous? Do you buy any of that case? Do you think there's legitimacy there?
I think there are a lot of fair arguments being made for additional funding, for additional fencing, for enhanced fencing. But that funding has to go through Congress. The president doesn't get to just declare an emergency for something that Congress has deliberated many times over the past several years. The president has signed legislation that Congress passed that did not have the funding he wanted. He didn't veto that legislation. You can't not veto the legislation and then say there's an emergency. If it was an emergency, you should have vetoed it in the first place. So I think that we have to be really careful about proceeding here. We have to make sure that each branch stays within its own lane and Congress retains its power over the purse.
You're also, Congressman, been a critic of the administration's policy on separating children from their parents who have crossed the southern border illegally. It's been in the spotlight on the Hill today, a number of hearings. Also, a committee that you are on, the House Oversight Committee, today issued some first subpoenas of the Justice Department, Health and Human Services, Homeland Security Department to try to get an accurate, detailed accounting of where all those children went, the conditions that they went through. Again, you're only one of a couple of Republicans who have supported those subpoenas. Explain your rationale. Why are you behind subpoenaing the administration on this issue?
It was a reasonable request, and in fact, just last year, Republicans were supporting the same request. So they sent a letter to these departments asking for the same information. So Republicans were okay with it last term. They should be okay with it this term. I'm not going to change my politics just because Democrats are now in the majority. If we were okay with it before, we should be okay with it now, and I think it's a perfectly reasonable request.
All right, Congressman Justin Amash, a Republican of Michigan, great to have you. Thanks so much for joining us here in the briefing room on ABC News Live. We really appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Speaking of those subpoenas, a little bit more of a conversation on that now with our Mary Alice Parks, our Capitol Hill reporter and deputy political director, who's been digging into that today. Mary Alice, to help us take a step back and understand the significance of the House Oversight Committee issuing its very first subpoenas of this Congress on this subject. They want to know, where did these children go?
And so it begins, Devin. You just hit it on the head, the significance of what happened today. The Democrats over there on the House have promised to use their new subpoena power to conduct very rigorous oversight of this administration. And now they have. They voted in the House Oversight Committee to issue the first subpoena on this separation issue, separating children from their families on the border. And even though the administration had turned over some documents, the Democrats just thought it was not enough, that there were still too many questions unanswered, and so they wanted to take this rather dramatic step to compel the agencies to give even more documents over to Congress.
And let's take a look at Elijah Cummings, the chairman of that committee, put out a statement. I think we had some of it up. But he has been driving this, Mary Alice. He really wants the administration to be held to account because so many of these children, by the administration's own admission, have sort of, quote unquote, gone missing.
Exactly. He said that he thinks this is the true national emergency. He called the family separations on the border government state-sponsored child abuse. And he says he's looking for very specific answers, like the names of the children, their exact location, any details that the government has about their family members, and any plans that they have to reunite specific children with their families.
All right, Mary Alice Parks for us on Capitol Hill. Thanks so much, Mary Alice. And Quinn Owen, speaking of those children who have gone missing, been subjected to very difficult conditions, there was a separate hearing today in the House Judiciary Committee led by Democrats into the conditions these children have been put in by Customs and Border Protection, Health and Human Services. Some pretty gut-wrenching testimony today.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Devin. There are thousands of allegations just revealed today of sexual abuse against unaccompanied children who are in these HHS HHS facilities. These are facilities that are contracted out to be run to house these unaccompanied kids, and the details, they get pretty graphic.
And I think we have some of the numbers here. These documents that you're talking about obtained by Democrats on the Judiciary Committee, made public for the first time, which show in sheer numbers the number of allegations of sexual abuse of minors in the custody of Customs and Border Protection. These are either children separated from their parents or who came across the border alone. As you see from some of these numbers, there has been an uptick since 2015 in the number of allegations and the number of cases brought for prosecution. We should note to everybody that this trend sort of began under the Obama administration. No question, there's been an uptick now for sure. But
and one interesting detail here, more than 150 of these allegations involve staff members at these facilities.
What is HHS saying about all
Well,
this?
HHS, for their part, says they take these accusations very seriously. They do make efforts to investigate when there is an accusation. In some cases, these people who are accused are reported to the FBI, they're investigated by authorities, and in multiple cases, they have been arrested. One heart-wrenching case, Devin, I just have to share, one young girl was approached by a staff member, asked to, and touched inappropriately, kissed inappropriately. That staff member was eventually arrested and prosecuted for sexual abuse.
Wow, just horrific situation, and this is just a look at sexual abuse inside the detention system. Quinn Owen, thanks for that. For a little more on this now, I want to bring in another member of Congress, or Congressman Raul Ruiz of California, Democrat, who is not only someone who has been involved with border conditions, but also an emergency medical doctor. Congressman Ruiz, great to see you, sir. I want to get your reaction off the top to this unbelievable testimony today. I don't know if you got a chance to see any of it, and this report coming out from DHS that so many children in custody, government custody, have lodged allegations of sexual abuse.
It's an outrage. It's a moral violation of our code as humans to protect our young from being abused. And these are children who are vulnerable, who are defenseless, who are without the social support that they need, fearing retribution, fearing the authority, our own agents causing these kind of harms, or the staff of these facilities that are there to protect them and that have responsibility over them, abusing them in this way. You better believe we're gonna bring some more transparency, demand some more hearings. I sit on the Energy and Commerce Committee. We're gonna bring in the Office of Refugee Resettlement to demand answers to some questions, and we need more transparency and find out what the hell's going on in our immigration system, especially when women, children, toddlers, infants, and elderly are being detained in inhumane circumstances.
Yeah, I'm hoping you could talk a little bit more about that. You have spent some time down touring these facilities and recently come back. You're spearheading some legislation right now to urge direct Customs and Border Protection to improve humanitarian conditions. We're seeing on the screen here some of what that resolution would call for. I'm shocked that you even need to take these steps. How surprised were you, and what did you see when you were down there?
Well, when I visited the stations at Lordsburg and Antelope Wells in New Mexico, my heart was broken. I had to excuse myself, otherwise I would have started crying in publicly, which I don't like to do. But to see women and infants and children and elderly stacked in a room, in a concrete, windowless, cold room, coughing on each other, where it's so packed that you couldn't see the floor, laying on just a thin sheet of aluminum blanket, was very, very heartbreaking. It is consistent with the dehumanizing language that's coming out of the White House regarding asylum seekers, and therefore my resolution is a prelude to legislation that I'm about to introduce that is consistent with international humanitarian norms, as well as our own Constitution, our own laws with asylum seekers seeking safety in our countries, to treat them with the respect of human dignity in order to address the humanitarian needs. For example, providing diapers, providing baby food and infant formula, providing an ability to wash your hands with soap and water, ability to bathe daily, things like making sure you have a private private clean toilet that you can use, feminine products. These are very basic humanitarian needs that we're not providing for anybody detained in CBP's custody right now. And it's important to note that if you're going to take families, women and children and elderly, into your custody and detain them, then it is the responsibility of the agency to provide for those humanitarian needs.
I think you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody that disagrees with that. We will follow your resolution, know that that's going to be coming up for some consideration shortly. And finally, before we let you go, Congressman Ruiz, I want to ask you about today's big vote this evening on terminating the president's emergency declaration. Know you are supporting that resolution. Got to ask you about the politics of this from the Democratic perspective. Is there any risk headed into the 2020 campaign that a move like this could be seen as sort of Democrats overplaying their hand? Do you have to be careful not to block stricter border measures too much, so to speak?
Well, you know, this is something that's been debated in the American public through elections, and the vast majority of the people voted against President Trump and his idea of a border wall. The vast majority of the people voted in favor of Democrats during the midterms, where they were against building a ineffective and very expensive border wall. And so what we're doing here is going towards using the Constitution and the checks and balances to protect the Article 1 and Congress's role of determining what gets spent, and to prevent the overreach and the power grab by a president who's trying to bypass our Constitution to create his own power based on no evidence whatsoever that we're having any kind of threat to our national security, where we're imploding as a country, and that Congress doesn't have the time to act on the situation at the border. So I'm against this because I am for the Constitution. I am for the checks and balances. I believe in our Constitution. I believe in the intent of our forefathers that wanted to create a Constitution that would prevent a king or authoritarian figure from exercising too much power. And so that's why I'm voting against this resolution.
And that resolution is expected.
The emergency declaration.
You're right. In favor of the resolution, which is against the resolution. We know that that's going to come up later tonight. It's expected to pass. Congressman Raul Ruiz of California, thank you so much, sir. Appreciate your time. Great to have your perspective and expertise as well down there in those border facilities. Thank you, sir. Moving on now, another big day on Capitol Hill. This one involving the Mueller investigation and the president's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen. This is a huge week, John, as you know. John Santucci here, by the way, our chief investigative reporter and occasional co-anchor of the show, friend of the show, as we like to say. John, tell us what Michael Cohen is up to this week before he heads to prison.
Well, Michael Cohen's having a pretty crazy week. We actually just learned, ABC News has learned that Michael Cohen has been officially disbarred by New York State. Breaking news, ABC's Aaron Katersky has learned it. This is a decision coming down from the Appellate Division of New York. Basically, Michael was going to be disbarred anyway. He has been convicted of a felony, which in any state in this country, you cannot be a practicing attorney if that has happened. So more formality. But what a moment, and this week that he's having. So he is on Capitol Hill right now today. He's with the Senate Intel Committee for a closed-door interview. Going to go on for several hours. We know that our team staked him early this morning. Mary Bruce chasing him down the halls with our gang up there. And then he's going to be back there tomorrow, Devin, which, I mean, what's like your favorite snack? Popcorn, peanuts, something?
Well, we'll have a lot of snacks.
You're going to
It's going to be a long hearing tomorrow.
A marathon. And what sources are telling us about this public hearing is that we're going to see Cohen talk about the Donald Trump behind closed doors.
And that's going to be a rare thing. It's the first time we'll have heard from him under oath in public about all those years serving the boss. Members of Congress who are going to be in those hearings have already formed their opinions. And as you said, Mary Bruce caught up with a whole bunch of them just a short time ago, Republicans and Democrats, what they think of Michael Cohen and what they hope to learn tomorrow in that testimony. Take a listen.
In 3 days of testimony before 3 different congressional committees, Michael Cohen, the president's former attorney and fixer, is pulling back the curtain on President Trump, detailing what he claims is the president's history of lying, racism, and cheating. And for the first time publicly, sources familiar tell us that Cohen will accuse the president of criminal conduct while in office. But Republicans in particular are quick to point out that Cohen has pleaded guilty to lying to Congress. So can he be trusted? Well, we've been up asking members that very question. Mr. Cohen, should the president be worried? What evidence do you have of criminal conduct? You've lied before. Why should Congress trust you now, Mr. Cohen?
I think most of you know my big interest has been in the follow the money issues. And obviously I can't talk about what goes on inside the committee, but what I intend to keep focused on is untangling the very complicated financial arrangements between Donald Trump and Russia.
Senator, can you trust Michael Cohen?
I'm going to leave it at that.
Do you expect him to tell the truth this time?
No. And I think between us and the Mueller investigation that we're going to find out just about everything there is to find out about these allegations. And so far, there's not much, if anything, to show for it.
We're at another inflection point where American justice is either going to be vindicated or desecrated. And Michael Cohen has answers to some of the questions that the American people need to know.
So that's what they want to know. What's he going to say?
Yeah, so what we're hearing from our sources, Devin, is that he's going to go into potential crimes the president may have committed while he was in office. And this really goes back. He claims that there's going to be memos that we're going to see. We're going to actually hopefully learn more about that before his testimony. Our team has been working on that throughout the last couple of hours. But really what this is going to boil down to is the payments back to Stormy Daniels, right? That's where we get into the campaign finance violation. It's one of the charges that he faced from the New York court by the Southern District up there. But if he actually goes into the payments, the reimbursements, how that was working, the dialogue with Trump, with people around him, it could really open us into the backdoor dealings that we have not heard a lot of details of. Remember, Michael pleaded guilty. We've not really heard Michael speak outside of that one interview he has done with ABC
Right.
News.
We haven't seen the evidence that's been amassed either, but are people going to believe him? You put that question to his counsel, Lanny Davis, in the new podcast, The Investigation. Everybody should download it.
Subscribe.
It's a great,
That's the
and
word.
subscribe.
That's what we need. 5 stars.
It's a fantastic podcast, but the new episode today talks to John Podesta. But Lanny Davis, Michael Cohen's attorney, talked to you in a recent episode, and he basically explained why we should believe Michael Cohen. But a lot of people sort of don't know what to make of this.
Because listen, Michael Cohen is someone that has admitted now, and we knew it then, he lied often for Mr. Trump, as he referred to him, right? He was on television saying all wonderful, great things, not always the truth. Lanny Davis, who has been his attorney, worked for the Clintons, a well-known Democrat, now working for Michael Cohen, says Michael Cohen has changed. He has accepted the truth, and that is what he's going to own tomorrow. What's fascinating to watch tomorrow, Devin, this is the committee that Michael Cohen lied to behind closed doors. It's one of the charges that he got from those federal prosecutors in New York. So he's going to have to apologize to these people.
Apologize and do over, and we'll see how credible he is. John Santucci, thanks so much. You will be here tomorrow anchoring special coverage of that hearing. It will be wall-to-wall here on ABC News Live and on your ABC News station. So I hope you tune in tomorrow. A rare occurrence to see the president's personal attorney in the hot seat as the president is overseas as well. And there it is, 10 Eastern time. Michael Cohen takes the spot. John Santucci, thanks for that. A note now on an unfinished piece of business from the 2018 midterm elections, and we've covered it here in the briefing room. The North Carolina 9th Congressional District has been in limbo since allegations of election fraud threw things into disarray. Well, last week, the State Board of Elections there determined that there was sufficient evidence fraud had occurred in the race to call a new election. The Democrat, Dan McCready, said he's in the race, but this guy right here, Mark Harris, the Republican who did win the first go-round, announced just a few moments ago that he is not going to run in the redo at a to-be-determined date later on this year. So keeping our eyes on that. Finally today, the big event, of course, in the next 24 hours will be the president's second summit with Kim Jong-un of North Korea in Vietnam. Our Joo-hee Cho, Asian correspondent for ABC News, is live there in Vietnam. Great to see you, Joo-hee. So give us the lay of the land.
Great to see you, too.
What did you see? What's happened the past 24 hours? And tell us a little bit about Kim's arrival.
Well, yes, this morning Kim Jong-un arrived after a 66-hour train journey from Pyongyang to here to Hanoi. That's about 2,000 miles. And I want to talk a little bit about why he's taking that train instead of a short 5-hour flight. It's because he's really concerned about his security. And I don't know if you've seen his train, but it's a 21 bulletproof carriages. has plush leather sofas and conference rooms, and it's a very luxurious way to travel. It's armored, and some South Korean reports say that it even carries a helicopter and a bulletproof vehicle in it. And also, it's part of a family tradition that runs in the Kim family. They call it the train diplomacy. His grandfather came to Vietnam in a train in 1950s, and this is also a part of an ode to his grandfather, whom he wants to be seen after. And also, one of the reasons why he took the train is because of national pride. If you remember, Kim Jong-un took China's Air China jumbo jet to Singapore last year. They had to lend Kim Jong-un their jumbo jet because they are not equipped to, his plane is not equipped to fly long distance. And they also provided fighter jet escort all the way to Singapore. Although today, when his train came in, we saw that the Chinese National Railway locomotive did pull his specialized green train through Chinese territory. Devin?
And what are you expecting tomorrow, Joo-hee? The summit to get underway Thursday, but tomorrow there are some pregame festivities underway. Give us the lay of the land on tomorrow's schedule.
Yes, President Trump just arrived a couple hours ago, and he will meet with the Prime Minister and President of Vietnam in the morning. And early evening, we know that President Trump will have his first interaction with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, including a one-on-one meeting. And then they're going to dinner with a few aides from each side.
And it's going to be quite a dinner indeed. We'll have full coverage, including with your help, Joo-hee Cho, over there in Hanoi, Vietnam, reporting live tomorrow with us here on ABC News Live as well for the Trump-Kim face-to-face summit across ABC News platforms. As those pictures come in, will be a packed day, beginning, like we said, with dinner, and continuing on to a number of summit meetings. We shall see what comes out of that. Great to have you with us today in the briefing room here in Washington. We're here every day, 3:30 Eastern Time on all the ABC News platforms. Hope you download the ABC News app if you don't already have it on your phone. For now, I'm Devin Dwyer in Washington. We'll see you next time.